Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Nicola Brown. I'm co-chair of Wish Northwest, and I am delighted to be joined today by Cher from One Consulting and Carly and Joe from Aspire Housing. So this session today is focusing on technology. Well, that was the idea. We were talking about technology, and One Consulting, who are based all over the UK, specialist in housing, really concentrate on technology as an enabler with housing. Cher, one of their consultants, like many of the consultants, has got vast experience in housing all over the UK. And they've worked with Aspire Housing, and both Carly and Joe are going to talk about their experiences of IT, project, and One Consulting in the project that they ran over at Aspire, a transformation program, which was this year, 2020. So we all know this year didn't pan out quite as lots of us planned, but we're going to hear about this year from the perspective of two mums, from IT, and also a little bit from One Consulting as to their role and who they are. So I'm going to hand over now to Carly, who's going to speak first. If there are any questions, do please ask questions in the Q&A, and I'll probably look to field them at the end. We'll probably look to finish about 1:45 to talk about questions and answers, or you can chat to us in the chat box and I'll manage that. So I'll go dark and I will hand over to Carly. Thanks, Carly.
Thanks, Nicola. Hi, everyone. Thank you for choosing to spend your lunchtime listening to our story. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my career journey so far, and then I'll hand over to Joe, and Joe will talk to you a little bit about her journey, and then we'll talk to you a little bit more about this year in particular and the project that we've been working on this year. But it is quite a personal story, our personal journey, and how this year has been quite different, as you'll all probably relate to. So my career so far, I started as a trainee housing officer back in 2004, straight out of university, kind of saw this trainee job advertised and kind of fell into social housing from there, and obviously still in that world today. Like most people, I'd never really heard of it before, but it was actually a really good opportunity for me. I moved around quite a lot during that time within the different roles, so I got a really good experience. I was also really lucky enough to do my MSc at that time as well in housing practice, so did a day release kind of at university doing that. Was really good. In 2008 I moved to Aspire Housing, so I'd had my eye on Aspire actually for quite a while. We'd done some kind of multi-agency working and some cross-county working, and Aspire always kind of came in and took over those meetings, really slick, really professional, and I thought, yeah, that's where I'm going to work. So I did in 2008. I joined as the assistant independent living manager at the time, but then I quickly moved into more of a service improvement officer role, and that's where I've stayed really. Moved around various different guises of that kind of role, but all in that kind of area. And I felt that that's what suited me, suited my skill set, suited the way that my mind works. I'm always looking for ways to work smarter, work more efficiently. So that really suited me. In 2016, I got the opportunity to train as a facilitator, and I felt that really helped my career at that time. I am quite an introverted person and wouldn't naturally do something like this, or stand up in front of a group of people and speak. But by training and doing this facilitator training, it just gave me this whole toolkit that I could kind of hide behind in a way, but it gave structure to sessions. And before I knew it, I was kind of stood in front of 50 people, executive team in the room, and just facilitating sessions and making sure that we got, results, and it led to real change in the business as well. So that was really good for me, really good for my profile in the business as well. In 2017, I came back from work from having my second child, had my daughter, and my role had moved into the IT team at that point. And this was another really good move for me. Everything I'd ever done had, kind of touched on IT and how we use systems in the business. So moving me into the IT team just gave me a really good insight into how the IT team operates, and I became kind of that bridge between the business and IT. So that was really good experience for me. It felt like the role really, really fitted there. And it was around 2018 that we started to look at kind of the future IT strategy and what became our cloud first program of work. So it was a massive transformation program really around the IT, but also kind of business process and how we work. So we were looking at moving all of our IT infrastructure to the cloud, simplifying all of our application landscape. You know, we've got a lot of various kind of IT applications and data held in different places. So moving all of that into kind of a more slick process, more slick approach. Just really exciting stuff, you know, massive transformation across the business. And I just knew that I wanted to be part of that. And I wanted to be a key part of that. But at the same time, I didn't want to give up the job that I was also already doing. So my role at the time was a continuous improvement manager. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this and is the same, but I always want to do everything. I want to get stuck in. I want to be part of the big things. So we knew we needed a dedicated kind of project manager on the infrastructure side of the projects. That was huge. And also on the system side, which was mainly around Orchard, which is our housing management side. And that's the role that I really wanted. But I didn't want to give up my core role as well. So I spoke to my manager about it, and we decided at the time to put the project manager role out to advert and kind of see what happened. And I thought I'll see how that goes. And I was on holiday when they interviewed for that role. And then at the end of the day, I just got a text message from my manager saying, "You've got yourself a new job on top of the job that I already had." So I'd got my wish. But that's when the panic kicked in, really. Joe, if you want to click to the next slide, thank you. So that's when the reality check and, you know, that reality hit of what have I done? You know, I've already got a really busy job as the continuous improvement manager. I built that up over the years. I've got a good team actually working for me now, and still loads of things that I wanted to achieve with that team and things that we could do. So it wasn't like I was coasting along in a job. You know, I was already very busy, and then I'd taken on this massive project. How was I going to manage that alongside all my family commitments? You know, I'm not a trained project manager. I wasn't at that time. I'd worked on projects, but never anything this big. You know, the whole organisation was looking at this. It was massive investment. They wanted the returns. So yeah, a real wobble at that point. You know, thinking I'm not an IT person. My role had moved into IT, but I hadn't got an IT background, so I wasn't used to working with IT suppliers. I was worried that it was going to get really technical and I wouldn't be able to do it. So yeah, real panic, thinking, what if I fail here? I've put myself on the line. I've built up a really good reputation, and that could all be lost. But at the same time, I was excited. That was the overwhelming feeling. I think as much as, you know, you have that fear, don't you? But I was excited. I wanted to do this. So I was just really honest, and I sat down with my manager at the time and spoke to him about it, about the fears that I had and the worries that I had. And he was brilliant, you know, 100% confidence in me, wouldn't have offered me the role if he didn't think that I could do it. But what we talked about then was what support I might need to make sure that I wasn't under kind of unnecessary pressure, and that obviously the project was a success and the project succeeded. So we put two things in place really at that point. One was we engaged with One Consulting. So One Consulting helped us on the kind of project and program side. So bringing in all of that kind of projects and program governance and helping us with that. But more than that, really, it wasn't like a typical kind of consultant relationship. It was also to act as like a mentor for me. On one hand, to help me with my skill set and make sure that I was developing and learning, but also for the business as well, to future-proof that we'd have those skills kind of in-house going forward. And then the other side was we looked at another role, because we didn't recruit obviously a dedicated project manager for the role. So we looked at a project coordinator role, a program coordinator role, to really help me on the ground and help with the wider program as well and the other projects that were going on. And, you know, I couldn't cope without her now. She keeps me in check and keeps everything running on the ground. And that's a little introduction there to Joe. So I'll hand over to you, Joe, to talk about your career so far.
Hi everyone, thanks Carly. So as Carly said, I'm currently the programme coordinator in the IT team. So I'll just tell you a bit about my background. When I left school, I went on to university like many people do. But after a couple of attempts, I decided that wasn't the way forward for me, which made me feel a bit disappointed in myself and not knowing where to go. Everyone around me was at university. So I took a step back and thought, right, come on, let's get my head into gear. And I applied for a job at the local council in housing as an administration assistant. So I started that in 2010 and got stuck into it. I loved working in housing. It was so varied, no day was the same. There were different challenges and you could develop and gain more knowledge, and I really enjoyed it. It did take a slight detour due to a restructure, but then I ended up back in housing, working for Aspire Housing in 2012. And to be honest with you, I've never looked back. I love working for Aspire. I never thought I would stay at a company for so long, but they've really invested in the staff and given me various opportunities. So I did join as a neighbourhood assistant, and during that time I've stepped up to help with the neighbourhood officers and doing low-level ASB and picking up some elements of their work. I also moved over for a job swap into the lettings team to understand a bit more about that side of the business. And then in 2014, I was lucky to get a position as an environmental improvement officer. It was a 12-month maternity cover. But when I went into this role, I just knew that projects was the way forward for me. It was managing small-scale environmental projects and managing contractors to do the work, managing staff internally to get the job done. And something just clicked that actually this is where my skills are. But unfortunately it was a secondment, so I did go back to my old role, but my manager was really supportive and gave me projects within the neighbourhood team at that time. So any changes to systems that we were doing, I would work with IT or with people in the team to get them done. I was sort of that go-to project person, which was really good for me. In 2016, I fancied a bit of a change, really. I'd been in the role a few years and thought, let's try something different. And I moved over to the wellbeing advisor role. That role was managing like community living schemes or sheltered schemes. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, that role just wasn't really ever me. As much as a lot of people do enjoy that role, it just didn't fit my skill set. So during that, I have worked in it for a few years, but during that time I did have my 2 children. So I probably wasn't in the role as much as it does look like I was. Then when I was on maternity leave, well, actually I wasn't maternity leave, sorry, I was pregnant with my second child, and I thought, what am I actually going to do? You know, I like the project stuff, but I also like dealing with people. So I thought, I know, I'm going to go and do a CIPD, which is an HR qualification. And I went off and invested in myself during my maternity leave, and like I say, whilst I was pregnant. But the thing that really stood out in that course was the change management aspect of HR. So actually all the policy and process, all the policy changes and things like that, it wasn't really me, it was that change management. And I was on maternity leave in 2019, and in I think it was July time, I saw the programme coordinator role advertised, and I thought, wow, this looks interesting, this looks like it would fit my skills, and it's sort of the job I've been looking for. So I gave Carly a call and we had a good chat about the role and when the role would start, and I applied for the job and was successful. But along with that, getting that job and feeling pleased with myself, there was a lot of I was on a bit of an emotional roller coaster, as I was on maternity leave, wasn't due back till December, but this role needed to start soon. We were in the middle of planning the projects. So I did go back to work quite early, and it was, like I say, an emotional roller coaster really of, am I doing the right thing? Am I failing my daughter? But this is for me. You know, I've had my children now. I know I don't want a third. Can't cope with the 2 I've got. So, you know, carrying on and doing something for me and for my career development. But it is something that I'm so pleased I did. I don't feel like I failed my daughter. I actually think getting this job and developing myself personally has benefited my children, because I do feel more like I'm doing something I enjoy rather than just going into work to do a job to get paid, basically. And then whilst I've been doing the programme coordinator role, Carly and Aspire have invested and put me on the MSP Foundation course, which luckily I passed in November, and that's been really beneficial to me in the job I'm in now. So that's really where I've been so far and where I've got to.
Thanks, Jo. So yeah, you can see we've both had quite varied, roles leading up to these project and program roles that we took on, and the various kind of experiences that we've had have all helped us. But it was very much learning on the job when we took on these roles, and it was a steep kind of career development and learning curve for us. But not just for us, it was also a big change for the business as well at Aspire. So we'd had projects before, and we used kind of light touch project management methodologies, but we'd never embarked on anything of this scale, and we'd not used the kind of MSP type program management approach. So it was very new to us, but it was also very new to the business. So we worked with One Consulting, and they helped us with that kind of best practice framework. But we did have to, work with the business and help them to get used to this new way of working. There's a lot more governance and control than what we were used to. But what we did find is that everyone bought into it very quickly. So the executive teams especially, they liked that the framework meant that they had full control, and we were communicating around the programs and the project delivery. So we did get buy-in, and it did give the program more credibility, really, and it really helped us with our credibility in the business as well, where we probably had that nervousness that we weren't trained or qualified kind of project managers or program managers. But I think because we had kind of One Consulting working with us there, it did help us with that credibility and helped our confidence as well. So we were learning on the job, learning this program and project management framework. Jo, do you want to talk about the supplier side?
Yeah. So when I took the job, it was originally just going to be working on the Orchard project, but I ended up also working on the infrastructure side, which was dealing with quite technical requirements. Obviously, I didn't need to know all the terminology, but as you can imagine, walking into those meetings for the first few times, I was so nervous, and I sat there thinking, I have not understood a word that's just been said. What should I, what does any of this mean? I was too scared to ask any questions. But soon, after a few times and having a quiet word with myself, I did start to become a bit more confident. And now I do run those meetings, and I'm sort of the go-to person for everybody in relation to the actions on those meetings or what needs to be done next. And I just think no matter what skill, what experience you've got with IT or IT projects, you don't need to know the in-depth information. You don't need to know all that technical talk. You just need to know what needs to be done next and the time scales. And it's really important to keep reminding yourself that, otherwise you can become very overwhelmed and feel out of your depth like I did at the beginning.
Yeah, and Jo's right, she's definitely the go-to person there. And it's a really busy time for us as well. We were running so many on-site workshops over all of the projects actually. On my side it was more the Orchard side, but Jo was covering the whole programme. So we'd got various different suppliers and consultants on site, different groups from across the business running, involved in those sessions. And we were very much making sure, we've got the right people in the room. Had we got clear kind of outcomes that we needed to get from those sessions, making sure that they were staying on track, joining up the dots really, and just making sure that where we weren't sure about something, we were putting a workshop on, and people had that time to really work out the impact of things and changes and understand what was involved. So yeah, we were really, really busy at that time. And like we said, learning very much on the job. Jo?
Yes, so stepping up, I'm sure most people do step up at some point in the role or for different elements, but this was a real change of how I worked. I was so used to being on the front line and dealing with day-to-day issues, and I had to teach myself to take a step back and to look at things from a programme and project management level and try and link in how things work to business processes, or how different areas of the programme linked with each other, or other projects linked with other projects. So it was a bit of a learning curve, but I had a lot of support from One Consulting of how to do that, and also from Carly, who got that bit more experience than me of how to take that step back and not be in the sort of the nitty-gritty day stuff. And now, I can take that step back and understand things a bit better and work with the business better from that programme management level.
Yeah, and we were both, into this new world of project and programme management, and part of that was the governance, and the programme board was a big change for us. So we've got 2 of our executive team members on the programme board. And at first we were really nervous going to those programme boards and reporting progress on the projects. It felt like, we had to say things were going well, or we'd get challenged and things. But what we realise now is actually that the role of the board is to support us with issues and help us where things are getting stuck. And actually we've gone from being nervous of those meetings to really enjoying those meetings. They're really kind of helpful, insightful meetings, and really supportive. And that's part of that governance framework that, it took us a while to get used to at first, but now, me and Jo live by that now, and we make sure that any new projects that are being thought of in the business all follow the governance framework, and we have all of this in place because we've really seen the value of it. So everything started, we were going really well. We were really getting into these new roles, and we've got stuff running really well on the ground. We were delivering, and then we went into lockdown and everything changed. I'm sure you can all kind of relate to that. It's just unprecedented and something we hadn't experienced before. The world changed around us, and we were working from home indefinitely. What we did find is the work that we've been doing on the programme so far have stood us in really good stead for this. So, it's really seamless moving the teams to working from home, and we managed to get the contact centre set up with a new telephony platform within 2 weeks. So really impressive stuff that we wouldn't have achieved if it wasn't for the programme so far. So that was really positive. But yeah, we had to kind of rethink, replan, reprioritise what we were doing. At first, to be honest, we thought this might be quite good for us on the projects, because some of the frontline teams aren't delivering all of their services, so they probably have more capacity to test things and implement the new parts of the system. And the executive team gave us that steer at first as well. I think that's what they thought as well. But it soon became clear that just wasn't the case. The frontline teams were busier than ever. Their workloads really increased. So like lettings team were doing a lot more lettings, money advice team, their work went through the roof. So we had to pause some work that we were doing with them. We were doing a lot more welfare calls to our customers. And to be honest, it just didn't feel right either to motor on regardless with the projects. We wanted to make sure that we were supporting our frontline colleagues and making sure that we were directing our resources in the best place for customers as well. So we did. We were constantly thinking and just assessing the situation around us, and nobody knew how things were going to change and what was happening. So it was just keeping on top of all that and being ready to change. So the project wasn't a top priority anymore. We had to switch quickly to having remote consultancy. So I'd already said we were having lots of sessions at that time and lots of on-site stuff, which worked quite well actually. It didn't seem to affect the project having the remote consultancy. But a lot of the things that we were having the consultancy on were already in motion. We're seeing a little bit of an impact now where we're trying to start new things from scratch, and we can't get people together in a room to do that. But it's just getting used to new ways of working. We did find that we were having increased meetings, but that was a positive. It meant that we were communicating well, and we were just keeping on top of the situation and keeping the project teams and the senior leaders informed. So communicating up, across, down. Again, really busy times and increased kind of meetings and communications, but it was working. We were delivering. We were still, getting through the milestones in the project and delivering change, and we were adjusting quite well. And then it all went up in the air again when they closed the nurseries and the schools. So I'm sure lots of you can relate to this one as well. So we thought we'd make you laugh with a few photos of our experiences during the school closures and the nursery closures. So yeah, here's a few pictures. So there's a sign there, do not disturb, mummy is working. My son made me that early on to stick on the office door, but it's still there now, but nobody pays any attention to it at all. So nobody reads that one. That's my son there with a tattoo across his head when, you know, I was on video calls all day and he's kind of fending for himself. And he came down very proudly with a tattoo across his forehead, but luckily we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. Sat in the garden there, 10 minutes apiece, while they both did a bit of colouring in, both sat down at the same time, so I managed to do a bit of work. Joe, do you want to? Oh, I've got my puppy there as well. You know, 2 kids isn't enough. We had a puppy as well.
Yeah, and then the other pictures, the 2 smaller children, they're both mine. As you can see, my 3.5-year-old decided to take control and be the parent to the 18-month-old, because it was, as most of you will know, it was a struggle, but it was good with the support that we had. But yes, it was, everything was messy every day. As you can see, they're in the wetsuits because there was always mud or sand or water, anything to keep them occupied for more than 5 minutes, basically.
So it is funny to look back on those pictures now, and to be honest, it was a bit like therapy, doing this presentation and reflecting back on what we've come through and what we achieved. But yeah, I think like Joe said, the support that we had like throughout, we supported each other, you know, we understood. And I think, you know, looking back now, we have come out stronger from that. I think, you know, we continued to deliver big projects and big programs throughout that period. But I think a lot of that is that we were very realistic. You know, we knew what we were experiencing, what we were going through. So we knew other people were experiencing similar, you know, whether it was with children or, you know, just how they were dealing with the situation and things. So, you know, we were really realistic. And I'd said before about communicating. So we just kept talking to people just to understand what was happening in their work areas, you know, understand how people were managing at home and working from home. Just understanding what was happening in the wider situation and the drivers from the executive team. So we kept talking, we continued to deliver, but like I say, you know, we were really realistic about what you could achieve in that situation. And it was a bit of a roller coaster. And, you know, Joe and I and the wider project team, we really supported each other where one of us was having a bad day with the children, etc. You know, the other one would pick up slack, and, you know, we just really helped each other through and got each other through that period. But I would say what was key to it was that we were really well supported. So we've got one consultant on one hand. So by then we'd built up a really good relationship, actually a really strong relationship. So we could just pick up the phone at any time, and where we were reprioritizing or shifting work, we could pick up the phone and get some advice and get some support on that really, and just help us through. But then the other side is our organisation. You know, we're really, really lucky that we work for a really good organisation, that people first is our kind of corporate strategy, and it really shone through, you know, 100%, and it still does now, not just for customers but also for staff. So, you know, I know a lot of people haven't been that lucky through this period, and they haven't had that support, but they were so good, and they, like I say, they continue to be. And everyone was realistic about the impact of the children being at home and the current situation now. So it always felt like when we needed to make a decision to change something or change the delivery or report that something had slipped, it was understood and we were supported around that as well. And I think, you know, Joe's alluded to that earlier on, that actually, you know, we've come out now and both of us have done our MSP Foundation qualifications that, you know, we never would have expected that 12 or 18 months ago when we started in these roles. You know, I've been rewarded now with a new role. So my role is Solutions Delivery Manager, and that's kind of recognition for me that I did take on that extra responsibility and that extra work. But it's been rewarded now and it's been recognised. I think that's, you know, credit to the organisation that we work for, that, you know, it's not just expected that we do these things, it is recognised. And we've done all of that through a really tough time, you know, a really tough year. So, yeah, I think it's really propelled kind of that upskilling and that confidence building as well, that, you know, if we can deliver big projects through this year, we can do anything, I think. So just some takeaways really from us, just to kind of sum up our journey. And I think the main thing for me is about just taking that chance on yourself. You know, if you think that you can do something, don't wait until you've got every single qualification that's needed on paper. You know, what's the worst that can happen? It's much more exciting to put yourself out there. But you know, accept advice, accept help, accept support. You know, whenever it's offered to you. I couldn't have gone through this career journey without the support that I've had. You know, and I will continue to accept support and advice and help on my next steps as well. But you know, I can really see a career path for myself now around, you know, the IT project manager side and the program level as well, which I never would have thought before. I always doubted myself that I hadn't come from an IT background and I didn't know all the technicalities of IT. But actually what I found is that's a real strength, because I understand the business and I understand how things translate from IT to the business. So that's actually a real strength, not a weakness. And I think it's just have that confidence to put yourself out there and take a chance. If you think you can do it, take that chance on yourself. Jo?
My takeaways then, one that's not on there really, is even if you're not sure what you want to do or where you want to get to, just to keep trying and to look at what you enjoy in your roles. Because I think for a while I knew I enjoyed things like projects, but you just carry on in your day job and you don't really take that step back to think about it. So keep going and you will find a path that suits you at some point. Another one is obviously that the kids are alive and I'm alive, so we did okay during lockdown. I think there were touch and go moments, as I'm sure many people had, but yeah, I don't dislike them. So I still love them, so we did okay, and they're alive. That's me.
Shall we hand over to you at that point, Cher?
Hi everyone. Yeah. So I do have to make a bit of a statement that I wasn't hugely actively involved in the Aspire work. So I don't want to take all the credit for all the amazing stuff that Kylie and Jo's done, and I will certainly be acknowledging all the efforts of my colleagues at One Consulting in doing it, really. So I just want to be completely honest that I've joined One Consulting quite recently, so to be fair on that level, I think. Can we go to the next slide, please, Jo? So yeah, One Consulting are a management consultancy, and we work all over the UK. We deal with housing sector primarily, but also wider public services too. Our specialism is around the kind of IT and digital stuff, but like Nicola said at the beginning, I think we view technology purely as an enabler for running the business. So it's there as part of the toolkit when you're trying to work out how to deliver and design the best services for your customers that you can. So as a result, we kind of take this approach of real integrated and connected transformation across all different services, and we look at all of the different things that need to be considered in the way that you design technology. And this was really, really key in the work that was done with Aspire. So next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty at the minute. So this is kind of the model that One Consulting use, and it sort of recognizes that there's a really interconnected relationship between all of these different things, and that really if you try to deliver a piece of work and only consider one aspect of it, further down the line it's just going to start causing you problems really, or you're going to realize that something's fallen through the gap so that the solution doesn't work as well. So we just have these sort of ready reckoners at lots of different levels that kind of prompt you to think about what the relationships are across the different parts of the business whenever you're looking to deliver real change within your organization. So an example of that on the next slide is very simplistically, and sorry if this is just a little bit too easy, but it's just to kind of articulate a little bit. So if you were looking at changing the way that you deal with rent arrears management, for example, and you were looking to go omni-channel so that you had people out having arrears type conversations using text, web chats, face-to-face, as well as automated payment lines, in order to make sure that the whole vision for the business is kind of aligned and working smartly together, you just need to consider all of the different teams that might touch on that. So as well well as your incomes team who deal with it naturally and your contact centres team, there might actually be a role for other front-facing officers like repairs teams and things as well. So it's just thinking through that relationship and then working out, is there any kind of organisational change or training implications coming through that? So do staff understand what's expected to them? What does that actually mean in terms of how they go about their job day to day? And so do they need to think and behave differently about that? And then taking it into the sort of risk management side of things is what could go wrong with that. Do you know, are your payment systems secure? Are you confident that all of the people who are dealing with those conversations have the right abilities to be able to have the right conversation, so that if you're dealing with someone who's vulnerable around money advice issues, are they confident to do the right signposting for support and all of that sort of thing? And it's just using all of those different prompts just means that basically the business process that you come up with at the end of it, using the technology, is more robust and is going to be better in terms of the services and outcomes that you achieve. And like, sorry, next slide please, Jo. Like Carly said, it was quite fortuitous, I guess, because a major objective within the Aspire programme was around the infrastructure, so the modernisation of the infrastructure that all of the technology sat upon, and looking at how that moved into the cloud. And that's the really sort of key tech enablers. And what that meant, obviously nobody predicted 2020, nobody predicted lockdown and everything that was going to happen. But because those elements of the project had been designed and delivered in advance of lockdown, like Carly said, it actually made responding to that so much easier than it would have been. So being able to make all staff work remotely, have full access to systems and information, and be able to have a fully remote contact centre mobilised within 2 weeks was purely enabled by the early work that had been designed within the programme that was designed and delivered. So our role really, I guess, is on many levels. One is sort of technical, I suppose, to advise on design and support and the solutions. It's also there to kind of just prompt some of the conversations, just to make sure that different elements of the design and process don't fall through the gaps. And like Carly and Jo said, and hopefully they feel that it had a really good outcome for them, was we do kind of try to support the way that people feel within their roles, so that they're confident as they grow and take on new responsibilities. Because I think in housing, probably more than any sector that I've had experience of, I think there is a real open door for people to move into new areas, get more experience, move into new teams, develop within their roles and grow. But obviously in order to do that, you have to be fair to people too, and put in place the right kind of support so that they can do it in a way that they become confident. Because one thing, kind of very maternally, that I thought was brilliant listening to Carly and Jo is that I came in a very similar path as they did. So my background was very non-technical, business improvement. And I think it actually took me a lot longer than it's clearly taken Carly and Jo to recognise that the fact I don't have a technical background isn't a problem. You know, it doesn't make me worse at my job. And actually, in some ways, it brings a lot of benefits to the table. I just think from my experience, it probably took me longer to get there than Carly and Jo. And I think that's brilliant to see, really. So just the final slide from us before we move on to questions is normally if we were having a bit of a chat in a room on something like this, we would bring along our little goodies, and you know, you'd be free to pick up one of those and take them off. I'm actually not 100% sure what's in the cup yet, but I think there's a few different things in there, so it might be worth exploring. If anyone would like one, please either get in contact with me via LinkedIn or let Nicola know. And also, if anybody does want to have a chat or anything like that, I am always available for a cup of tea online and a wee chinwag. So there we are.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I've got quite a few questions actually, but I just wanted to pick up actually on a discussion around what we've just been talking about, which was women in IT and women who fall into IT. But that sounds a bit as though we don't, but you know, the idea that IT careers for women, yeah, let's just have a couple of minutes around that, because we've talked about parenthood here. we've talked about lockdown and parenthood and women in IT, but actually, I mean, we're all four of us actually women in IT that, I mean, I'm not particularly technical, but I've been in IT 23 years. So very, very similar in that sense. So that there's something going on here in that our skill sets, you know, lend themselves to IT projects. They do. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
I think it does happen more now. I think you do see more people sort of transitioning across, because I think the importance of roles like product owners, you know, to be really clear on what the business need is that's becoming more popular. And I think that's the type of role that women perhaps typically or traditionally have felt a little bit more comfortable with, rather than the strictly technical side of things, you know. So I think the line between IT and the business is blurring, and I think that's helping people feel more confident to start stepping over that line a wee bit, and then suddenly you find you're right over the line and you think, how did that happen?
And Carly, do you think there are more women in IT within social housing?
Yeah, I think linked to what Cher's just said, actually, if I reflect now and think of, you know, who we're dealing with on the programs and the projects, a lot of them are women actually, but they are in that project and program kind of delivery role. But with that broader understanding of the IT and the systems knowledge. So yeah, actually, you know, we've got some really strong female role models that we're working with. And when I first moved into IT, we did have a female head of IT. You know, we have got a lot of women in our team at Aspire as well. So yeah, definitely, you know, seeing a lot more women in those roles.
And I'd say that it feels to me that social housing, government certainly sort of paves the way sometimes in terms of the gender balance. I most certainly in the commercial sector, we don't see that many women necessarily in IT, certainly on senior roles. So I'd like to see that we're paving the way, perhaps in social housing.
Yeah, I worked with Hitachi Solutions for a while as their head of housing. But what was interesting is I was the only female head of industry, but interestingly, it was for housing. Do you know? So I think there is something about the sector where it definitely feels that that ceiling is either higher or not there.
Yeah. No,
yeah. I think our infrastructure partners that we work with, they're mainly males in those roles. So I don't think we've met any females, have we, Jo, on that side? So it does feel like it's probably more the project and the program side at the moment.
Okay. We've got a question here which is about resilience, which is just around, would you say then that this year and your career progression is a testament to both your ladies' resilience as well as great team and One Consulting? But I think there's a word here about resilience.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we didn't have that kind of mindset and that determination within us, it could have gone a different way. But yeah, definitely, I think it's really propelled that kind of confidence and that resilience that we had in us. But it's really built that for us, and we do feel like we could tackle anything now, I think.
Super women.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring the session to the close. The last note that I need to make is around, we do have our Northwest drinks, Christmas drinks, next Wednesday evening. If Northwest members would like to join us for that, the event booking will be out shortly. Other than that, have a lovely Christmas. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.